All right. So if you could start off by just introducing yourself, your name, and your title with AAA.
Sure. John Treanor, JohnTreanor, spokesperson with AAA Utah.
Great. So just kind of getting right into it, following the U.S. Israeli strikes on Iran, can we expect gas prices to go up in Utah?
So there's a couple things to think about here. Um, right now, America doesn't get their gas or their oil directly from Iran, but we are affected by the global commodity that is oil. So we saw over the weekend the price of crude oil trading at about $7 to $9 more than it was before the strikes. So there's been an increase in how much crude oil costs. So the way to think about gas prices is this. You have oil refineries making gas across the country. Those oil refineries have to buy crude oil. If anyone gets their crude oil now, they will pay more than they did before the strikes. Nothing affects your gas prices more directly than the price of crude oil. It represents about 60% of what you pay at the pump. So when crude oil goes up, your gas prices likely will go up as well. We haven't seen that happen quite yet. In fact, when you look at Utah right now, we're cheaper than we were a week ago. Gas prices, in fact, are cheaper than they were yesterday by about a penny. So Utah gas has actually gone down. There's another thing to think about. There is a seasonal increase in gas prices right now. This is the time of year when weather gets better, so demand for gas goes up as more people are driving, and we start using what's called the summer blend of gasoline, which is a cleaner burning gas, but it costs more to make, so it costs more to buy. So we have this seasonal increase of demand and price happening. The compounding factor is what's going on in the Middle East, and that could have an effect, and likely will have an effect. We just don't know how big and when that effect will happen.
Can you tell me more about what it is about this region as to why it has such a large impact with the global supply?
So not region specific, right? Whenever we see anything happen, that could be a decision to drill less or to produce less oil. That could be something that happens in Central or South America. That could be what happened when we saw Russia invade Ukraine and we took Russia offline. No one was buying oil from Russia. That's a large producer of oil there. Whenever we see a global conflict or a decision made that's going to affect who can create or produce or sell oil, we see a ripple effect happen. Think of throwing a rock in a pond and those ripples hitting. If a country that creates a lot of oil, and Iran creates a lot of oil, isn't selling oil anymore, well, that means the countries that buy oil from them are going to have to look elsewhere to buy oil, which means demand is going to go up from those countries that do produce oil. That means prices are going to go up because demand goes up. It means countries like the U.S. that don't get their oil directly from Iran, oil refineries are going to be buying oil, but they're buying oil at a global scale. The price of oil is dictated globally, which means the price of a barrel of oil that they buy goes up. That means their for gas are going to go up as they still have to make a profit off that gasoline. So whenever we see any large scale event like this, where a country is not selling oil and not producing oil anymore, that is a big ripple effect because people are going to be sourcing oil from other places. Demand for oil goes up from those other countries, which means prices go up to meet that demand. And the oil refineries that buy oil, they're going to be buying more expensive oil, which means they're going to be selling more expensive gasoline.
So right now you mentioned there's not a big change in Utah. What about other states? Does this differ state by state, or is it primarily nationwide change we'd be seeing?
Well, two things. One, there is always state by state numbers because states sell oil, gas for different prices, and that's a bunch of different reasons why that happens. But oil prices at a global scale are going to affect prices globally, which means across the country we'll likely see increases. In fact, right now, the price of an average gallon of gasoline has been below $3 a gallon for a long time in America. Today it's $2.99. We could see it hit $3 a gallon again fairly soon. Right now, hard to tell what is going to be affected by the global oil supply and what's going to be affected seasonally. Typically, when we see the price of crude oil, it's a futures market. So when we see those prices go up, we don't see the effect immediately. It's not like flipping a light switch, right? When we see crude oil prices increase or decrease, typically it takes a couple days, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks to see those prices really affect us here at the pump. And that's because we have a supply of oil already. Those oil refineries that make gas for your gas station down the street, they have oil already. They're turning that into gasoline. Those gas stations, your state, they might already have oil and gas supplied as well. So you don't see that immediate effect happening. Again, not like a light switch. We're going to wait to see when that takes place and how significant the increase might be.
And Trump hasn't given a clear end date to strikes. How will the longevity change what impacts we see?
Isn't it? The price of crude oil is going to be affected by the supply of oil and the demand for oil. So, we're talking billions of barrels of oil a day. That's what Iran was producing, predominantly bought by China. China now is going to have to find another source of oil. Where are they going to get that from? They might turn to liquid natural gas, which is something that America supplies a lot of. There's a lot of demand for oil, for natural gas, for fuel. If China starts buying from other countries, the other countries that buy are going to see their prices maybe go up because demand is now up. So really, that's what we're seeing here. The other thing to think about that we haven't talked about yet is there's a major supply chain controlled by Iran called the Strait of Hormuz. For people unfamiliar, think of it like the Panama Canal. It is one place where oil, where liquid natural gas, where a lot of products go through. If the Strait of Hormuz is shut down or affected by the war, that's going to really squeeze supply chain. And that means prices could go up or prices supplies could be delayed because there's no real way around the Strait of Hormuz. We saw this potentially happen when the Trump administration made their first strikes months ago on Iran. The threat from Iran was to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and that threat was enough to see crude oil prices increase because, again, this is a futures market. So there's a lot of questions now. What happens with that vital supply chain in the Strait of Hormuz? What effect is that going to have on products that America buys, that America sells? Where's China going to get their oil from? What effect is that going to have, not only our country, but other countries? And when is this increase of crude oil prices going to hit America? How long is that increase going to last for? And what are we going to see happen?
Yeah, I guess I want to touch on some of those last questions. You
Sure.
mentioned it's a futures market. Do we have any idea? You mentioned maybe a couple of weeks, but do we have any idea of when this might hit the US and what type of change we could expect?
We don't know when it's going to hit the US or really how it's going to hit the US. We do know that crude oil prices have jumped. A barrel of crude oil has jumped anywhere from $7 to $9 a barrel, depending on what market you're looking at when you look at these futures, right? And that's a significant jump. Will they go higher than that? That's a good question. How long will that last? That's a good question. We don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know when it will happen. Typically, when we see increases or changes to crude oil prices, it takes a few days, maybe a week, or maybe 2 weeks for it to affect the United States. And a lot of that is going to is going to be affected by the supply that is existing right now.
You mentioned just in the past year also a threat with the Strait of Hormuz, but how have past international conflicts caused a large spike in prices
The
before?
most significant one was during the COVID pandemic when Russia launched their attack on Ukraine. Um, we didn't buy oil from Russia anymore. Nobody did. The region was shut off. That is a large oil producer, like Iran is a large oil producer. And that affected things in a big way in the short term, right? Now, that had another compounding factor, which was COVID and some dramatic effects that had on supply chain and buying and all those things. But whenever we saw Russia go offline, we saw prices affect that because, again, supply was really hampered. Now, those things were eventually offset. Obviously, Russia is still not selling oil, but oil prices have kind of accepted that. And that's because you increase the amount of drilling or you increase the amount of oil that is created elsewhere. What's going to happen with Iran? How are things going to get offset? What will happen with drilling there? A lot of that are questions that are way beyond my capacity and something that AAA could not possibly speculate on.
And is there anything the US can do or has done in the past?
The question is, where is America getting their oil from? And how not only America, but other countries, how are they going to try to shift that demand for oil or that need for oil? Will we see increased drilling elsewhere? Will we see deals being made elsewhere? That's all left to be seen, but definitely something other countries are working on as well.
And can you explain, I'm sorry, backtracking a little bit,
Sure.
but again, a bit of an overview on where the US currently gets its oil from.
So U.S. gets their oil from a lot of places. The U.S. gets their oil from, in the U.S., right? The United States is actually the leading oil producer in the world, but it's been that way for the past 4 or 5 years. Much of that oil is not turned into gasoline. We also make a lot of natural gas and turn that into liquid natural gas. That's something we use a lot as well. The Gulf of Mexico, it is a large creator of oil, but we also buy our gasoline. We buy our gasoline from places in Central America. We buy our gasoline from places I believe in Europe. Don't quote me on that. We get our gas from a lot of different countries.
Okay, so does that diversification of our sources help us in a situation like this? Or is it, like you mentioned, if a lot of the world's oil supply is coming out of the strait, would they all be affected?
Well, listen, there's two different things, right? Diversifying where you get oil from is always a good idea. That way, if something is affected one place, you have other places to turn to buy oil. The Strait of Hormuz is a different situation, though, because that's a supply chain issue. And that is where we send liquid natural gas to. That's where China sends things through. And a lot of goods and supplies run through the Strait of Hormuz. So separate from the issue of where we source our oil from, it's really a lot of stuff goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So if the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, that's a big supply chain issue. Working your way around that is another issue entirely.
Great. And then I just want to circle back to that first point one more time. Again, are we or have we seen any increase in gas prices so far?
Right now, we haven't seen a dramatic increase in gas prices. Certainly, the national average has gone up, but in Utah, right now, the gas is cheaper than it was last week. It's cheaper than it was yesterday.
And I guess how do we differentiate then how much of this is just seasonal change, like you mentioned, versus this international conflict?
It's really hard to do, right? And right now, where we've seen this kind of uptick slowly happening, and that has really been attributed to seasonal change. It's really early from what we've seen in Iran to attribute this directly to what's going on in Iran. Certainly, crude oil prices are up. When that will affect the U.S., I don't know.